Hey team, Johnny from onestepforward.com here. It's been 2 weeks since I climbed Mount Everest, or since I was on the summit of Mount Everest. Finally, I'm going to get to the Ask Me Anything. I whacked it on Instagram stories for Ask Me Anything. I thought I'd get a few questions and I got hundreds, maybe even 1,000. So I'm going to go through them quickly. And talk a little bit about Everest. I know you guys got a lot of questions. I can see that from my Instagram. Before I get started, Everest. Wow, that was wild. Maybe I'll just talk a little bit about it for a minute or two, and I'll cover a lot of the questions instantly. But how hard was it? Pretty hard. It's strange, like the how tired you are, how out of breath you are, even with the oxygen mask. The oxygen mask doesn't make it like you're down at sea level or even that much lower. So when you're at 8,800 meters on the summit, for example, it makes it like it's maybe 8,200 or 8,300. So there's still very little oxygen, and it's so difficult to convey how knackered, how tired you are taking each step. Like at some points when you walk a little bit faster, and you get out of breath, you take a step and you have to take like 2 minutes, like 20 breaths before you can take the next step. And that's when you're just going uphill. If there's like a rock that you have to climb or whatever, I would be looking at it and it would be like 50 meters away, which will take 20 minutes to make 50 meters. It's mental. And during those 20 minutes, I would just be thinking, oh my God, when I reach that rock, I've got to climb on top of that rock and I'm going to be like dying after it for 10 minutes recovering. And also, like when you're doing that recovery, you can't get enough oxygen. That's why it's so difficult. So you're breathing, and it feels like every breath's going to be your last breath. So I know that it's very fashionable to criticize the crowds on Everest and all this. And just for a bit of context, only 6,000 people have ever climbed Mount Everest. 10,000 people have won an Olympic gold medal. So even though the media tries to spin it as if there's like shitloads of people there, there's not. There's been a few occasions where people have got stuck in bottlenecks because of bad weather and they're forced to go at the same time and stuff, but it's not like that, to be honest. Very few people have done it, and I feel very proud to be one of those people. And when I see people criticizing it online and Twitter and Facebook and everything, I just feel like it stems from jealousy. I feel like maybe I might even have been that guy 10 years ago because I deep down want to climb the world's biggest mountain or do these things, and it's much easier for me just to criticize it than face the prospect of potentially doing it, saving for it, training for it, doing the expedition. And anyway, I'm very proud of it, so I feel quite protective of the experience when I see the negativity online. Not from you guys, you've been very supportive and thank you very much, but I do see it now and again. Of course, it would be nicer if people took their trash down from high camp, but there's only one camp that's like that. The rest of it's super clean, so it's a beautiful experience. All right, let me go through some of these questions. I've got them on my phone, so excuse me a second. All right. Now knowing or experiencing the summit up Everest, would you have added any change or preparation beforehand? That's a really good question. I trained really hard basically while I'm working through these 7 summits, the highest mountain on every continent. I've been training for years basically, and in the lead up to Everest I did like 9 months hardcore training here in Thailand where I'm based, and I just built a house in Chiang Mai in the north of Thailand, and there's a beautiful temple called Wat Doi Satep just on top of a mountain beside my house or near my house. And from my house to run up to the top of that and back down, or to cycle, is 50 kilometers. So I was just doing that most days. I hate running with a bag when I do my ultra marathons and stuff, and training with a bag. So I just never do it for any mountain or any ultra or anything. And every time I do the experience, I think, fuck, I should have trained with a bag. So again, I should have trained with a bag, but I hate it. So I probably won't do it in the future either. What I would have done maybe is, like, I was really fit for ultra marathons. I probably would have done more hiking and less running. Like long hikes, like 10-hour hikes with heavy bags would be the best way to train. But I kind of enjoy going out there and suffering on those long ultra runs. So, I mean, part of it is how well you can train, but part of it is like, are you enjoying your life? Are you enjoying the process? And I enjoyed how I trained. I probably could have done Probably would have done more squats and stuff for my legs, but I felt good on the mountain. I was strong and one of the strongest people, so no, it was okay. I just trained hard, like suffered every day, as long as you're pushing yourself, and I know I do that, so no, it was okay. The hardest moment on Everest, actually for me, obviously the summit day is the most difficult, but for me the hardest day weirdly was going from camp 2 to 3. The way Everest works, maybe I'll just explain that, is the whole expedition is just shy of 2 months. It was 7 weeks, I think 48 days or something like that. I was door to door, and you're not actually climbing for all that time. It's kind of a bit of a myth. So you spend the first 2 weeks doing the Everest Base Camp trek, or 10 days or whatever it is, and that's obviously easy and fun and beautiful, and you sleep in tea houses, like little Nepalese guest houses, and you eat proper food and sleep in a bed, like a crappy bed but still a bed. So the first 10 days are really easy. And then if you go with a good operator, like I did with Furtenbach Adventures, you'll go and climb a mountain about the same height as Denali. It's called Le Boucher, 6,100 meters or something like that. Like, what's that, 20,000 feet, whatever. And you go and climb that, and that takes 3 days or something, and that's pretty high. And then from there you go to base camp. So you're about 2 weeks in at that point, and you still got 4 or 5 weeks left. And then you're in base camp for a few days, settling in. You do a few acclimatization hikes that are like tricky but fine. And then you do something called a rotation, which is when you go up the mountain, up towards Everest, but not to the summit. You go up through the Kumbu icefall, which is the dangerous, famous like glacier that you have to get through. It takes 10 hours or whatever. And from base camp, you go through the Kumbu icefall, and then you've got camp 1, camp 2, camp 3, camp 4, and then the summit. So on your first rotation, you go to camp 2. So you go through the Kumbu icefall to camp 1, then you go to camp 2, and then sometimes you might go to 3 or not, and then you come back down to base camp, and then you do some more acclimatization hikes, and then eventually you'll then do the summit push. So you'll then go from base camp to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to summit and back down again. And by the time that's all said and done, it's 6, 7, 8 weeks. If you go with a cheaper operator, you don't do that Le Boucher climb. You do a second rotation up the mountain, which is tough because Kumbu icefall is tough, but it's also dangerous. So it's better to avoid that if you can. So that's how the system works. So then the question was like, what was the hardest bit? For me, going from camp 2 to camp 3 was really hard. Everest is here, and then there's another mountain beside it called Lhotse, which is the 5th highest, I think, or the 4th highest. And so to climb Everest, you have to climb up Lhotse face. It's like a sheer glacier, and I find that pretty tough. Colin, my tent mate, find that day okay, but you have good and bad days. You don't sleep well, you don't eat well. I find that day really tough from 2 to 3, brutal. Couldn't get oxygen. I get really claustrophobic. I hated wearing the mask, so that was tough. What changed in me after this experience? I'm quite hard on myself. Obviously, I had a challenging upbringing with no father, and we were on welfare for over a decade and all that. But so I do all this stuff. I don't know whether what it is, self-flagellation, ego, who knows? But this was the first time that I really felt proud of my achievement versus all the other stuff. I was just on to the next thing, but I felt, and I still feel, very proud of climbing Mount Everest, coming for where I've come from. So for the first time, I feel like happy and fulfilled in my achievement, my physical achievement. I feel really good about it. What was your first thought when you reached the top? How did you feel? This is similar to my every country in the world thing. Like, my last country was Norway, and loads of friends and family came, and we partied, and it was St. Patrick's Day, and everyone was drinking, and it was cool. But my second last country was Yemen, when I went to Socotra, and I hitchhiked in that cargo ship through the Somalian Sea for 4 days, and that took me months and months and months to finally make that breakthrough to get into Yemen. So that essentially, for me, emotionally, was like the last country for me, because Norway is a formality. You just fly and go, whereas Yemen was hard to get into, and that's when I was crying and blah, 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 and delighted. And same for Everest. I got to the Hillary Step on summit day, and I could see the summit, and I thought it was a false summit, which is like when you think you see the top of the mountain, but when you get there, there's another, it's a little bit higher. So I thought that was the false summit, and then when I got closer, someone's like, no, that's a summit, and I was maybe an hour away. And I just started crying, and I wasn't ready for that at all. First of all, I didn't realize I was so close to the summit, and also emotionally, like when you're suffering, going through the physical difficulty, you're just focused on taking your steps and not falling off the mountain, staying alive. And that was the first time I felt like, oh my God, I'm actually gonna reach the summit of Everest. Like Johnny Ward from a little town in Ireland is going to be standing on the summit of Everest, and I just started crying. Like when this random guy's like, no, that's the summit, and I just started crying. Hard to describe, to be honest. I could have stayed in that moment standing crying for about an hour, but I had to get going. It was freezing. Difficult to describe, but very emotional. On a scale of 1 to 100, how complicated physically, mentally, financially is it to organise this climb? God, if you include the finances, it's a solid 95 out of 100. Takes years of experience on mountains to be good enough to do it. Then it takes probably 6 months to a year of actual training for the event, and then saving. Like unless you come from a rich family or something, the price starts. And I'm going to jump ahead here because there's a million people asking me how much it costs. Furtenbach Adventures are like maybe the best operator on the mountain. And they offer 2 packages. I went for the cheaper one. So they do a classic climb, which is mine, 7 weeks at €69,000, so about $70,000. And you do a faster one where they do you get some special treatment, extra help, and blah blah blah. And it's about $100,000 or $95,000, so it's really expensive. If you go with a cheaper Nepali operator, you can do it for about 40-50 grand US, so about 20 grand cheaper. But without getting into the politics of the different ownership models, like the death rate, let's just say the death rates are very different with the European operators and other operators. So life and death, I think it's worth the extra money. To back to that question, how difficult is it to organize everything? When you include the training and the skill set and then the finances, it's really hard. I mean, it takes years to save for it alone, and then you risk failing. It's like obviously you might pay all that money and train all that time, and you might risk failure, and that's what I tweeted and Instagram just before I went up. Like you got to dare to be great, don't you? You've got to risk failure to reach greatness, and that's a very scary thing to do. And it's very easy and to say now, retrospectively, having succeeded. But in the moment, you have to be brave and risk everything. Otherwise, you'll never achieve anything, and that's a lot of pressure. Are there bodies along the way? Yes, not many, but yes. There was one just below the summit from a guy who died last year or 2019. And this year has been the deadliest year for Everest climbers ever. And on the way back down from Camp 4, just after summiting, there was a guy, a Nepali guy, who ran out of oxygen from the Nepali army expedition, and he was just hanging off the rope. So I was clipped in, coming back down that Lhotse face, and there was a body just hanging there upside down, like feet first. Pretty grim. And there was a guy called Seamus in 2019 who died, an Irish guy, and he summited. He was 39, I'm 39, and he was in my thoughts the whole time because he actually summited and died on the way down. I think he didn't clip in, or there was a problem with the rope, and I think he fell off, and I don't think he was ever recovered. So that was in the forefront of my mind the whole time, especially after summiting. You think you're done, and I was thinking about Seamus a lot, and God love him, like he helped keep me safe basically on the way down. So the death and the prospect of death throughout the whole experience is pretty tough. Like when we flew in to start the trek, there was a dead body on the helicopter on day 1, and I thought it was a really bad omen. And then 3 Sherpa sadly died in Kumbu Icefall the next week. And that was a terrible omen. And then Noel Hanna, Ireland's best climber, he was in Annapurna, a nearby mountain in the Himalayas, and he was climbing with no oxygen, and he didn't wake up in his tent the following week after that, so he died. And then when we were at Camp 2, there was 2 American guys that died, and you're constantly being faced with death basically, and you understand that like these are the risks, and what are you doing it for? Of course, ego's part of it, achievement, pushing yourself, trying to live a full life, and you've got to find your why and understand that the risks are there, and it's tough. The prospect of death was something that hung over me a lot, especially now I'm married and my mum's getting older, and that was a tough thing to deal with. Which was tougher, rowing the Atlantic or climbing Everest? physically Everest is 100 times harder, but mentally rowing the Atlantic is 100 times harder. Rowing the Atlantic is like mental torture. For anyone who has never followed my story, I rowed across the Atlantic from like just off the coast of Africa across the Atlantic to the Caribbean. It took 2 months. Physically that wasn't that hard, but mentally it was awful because you're living in this tiny, like you're living in a coffin for 2 months. But rowing the Atlantic's a bit fake. Like the tide does most of the work for you. Sure, you can speed it up with rowing, and we did that, but it's a bit of a fake physical achievement. But it is mentally really tough. So Everest is much physically harder, but rowing the Atlantic's much mentally harder. What was the scariest part? With Everest and a lot of every 8,000 meter mountain basically, and high mountains like Mont Blanc, when you get to dangerous parts, there's fixed ropes, and in Everest there's almost all fixed ropes, so you're clipped in, clip out, clip in, clip out with a carabiner. And coming up on the last day, up to the balcony, the ropes were fixed wrong or whatever, and it was really steep like this, and you're in the crampons and you're trying to climb, and the rope basically didn't allow, if you were clipped onto the rope you couldn't go, so we had to unclip for the whole section, and if you fall you're dead basically. And that was a very scary part. I was like so focused on my steps, like one bad step and you're gone. What surprised me most about the expedition? Do you know what surprised me most? And this is again about the local operators. The amount of people, let's say there was 400 people climbing over the whole season. The amount, there's probably 50 to 100 that like clearly shouldn't have been there. They weren't fit. They didn't know what they were doing. They couldn't put their crampons on, but they paid their 50 grand or 100 grand or whatever to a local operator. And normal operators ask for a climbing CV to see that, like, have you climbed big mountains and can you do what you need to do? And other operators will just take your money. Some of the less reputable operators will just take your money, and a lot of people, for me it seemed a lot of the Indian and Chinese groups like had no business being there, and I'm sure they all failed. Like people, overweight people, unfit people, people who didn't really know how to put their mountain boots on. That really surprised me. It surprised me that the operators were unprofessional enough to take them. It surprised me that the Sherpas didn't turn them around, and also surprised me that them and their families like didn't say to them, what the hell are you doing? Like, you're not a fit mountain person. Why are you doing this? Like, go and train for a year or two first. That really surprised me. That like I was so scared about climbing Everest and trained so hard and practiced so much, and the thought of just being unprepared and not knowing what you're doing, paying your money and showing up to a place that you can die, it blows my mind that would happen. But it does. Was I afraid that I'd be too tired of enough energy for the descent? Was I afraid that I wasn't afraid, but I was very well aware. I remember reading books when I was a kid about climbing Everest, and people talk about this thing called summit fever, which is like basically you use all your energy to get to the summit, and it's your dream, and then you're fucked and you've got no energy left to come back down, and most people die, or more people die on the way down. I know that's true. No, I wasn't worried about that, to be honest. Not about the energy. I'm not great with heights, so I was scared coming down because it's sheer drop on both sides, like a knife edge, the whole top, like, and you fall to your side, you're dead. So I was scared of dying and scared of falling, but I wasn't scared about the energy. I've done a lot of like long distance running, multi-days, and obviously climbed loads of other mountains and all that, so I knew that when the going gets tough, like, I'll stand up and be counted, but I was still scared, like, every second of it coming down, because it's scary. After all your epic previous adventures, will this experience change your life? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm proud for the first time, so that's positive. I probably won't climb any more 8,000 meters. Let's see, maybe K2. Will it change my life? Let's see. No, I don't think so. I think the only thing that'll change my life is kids, and inshallah that'll be this year or next year, let's see. But no, I don't think so. What was your most profound realization about yourself whilst climbing Everest? You know, it wasn't so much about myself too, but just about the world. It just makes you realize that, like, people can do anything as long as they set their mind to it, but there's nothing instant. In an era now of instant gratification, like, true achievement has to be delayed. It takes sacrifice and struggle, and sorry about that. It takes sacrifice and struggle, and Everest obviously was a culmination of. I finished every country in the world in 2017, so that was 6 years ago. So it's taken me 6 years to get here. So I felt like I also can achieve anything I want. I want to get into this property development stuff and maybe write a book, and I feel like anything's possible as long as you take action. Would I do it again? I would consider doing it from the Tibet side, which is what I originally signed up for, but China and their stupid COVID rules, even though they created the bloody virus, wouldn't let anyone in the country, so I couldn't go for 3 years. They delayed me. I would consider doing it from the Tibet side, yes, but it would only be if someone sponsored it, like Red Bull or whatever, because I'm not about to pay the money again now I've done it. But if someone sponsored it, I would consider it. Yeah, maybe. Were you the first ones on top, or was there a wait? Yeah, there was a bit of a wait, but it's not so much a wait because we were a strong group. Our operator's strong. We were all a strong team. Our summit attempt, we got to Camp 4, which is the last camp before the summit, at like 3 p.m. or something in the afternoon. And then we got in our tents, and like the slower climbers and the less fit people would then start their summit attempt 7, 8, 9 p.m. that night, same night. Whereas we knew we'd be much faster than them, so we didn't start our climb till 2 or 3 in the morning, and we caught all those guys. We were hoping that would avoid any bottlenecks, but we ended up catching them anyway. So by the time we were at the top, there was a bit of a wait, but it was kind of okay. Let's have a look. Did I suffer from altitude sickness, and what about your frostbite? That's 2 questions. Altitude sickness, not really. I had a few mild headaches on the way, but no, I felt okay. We slept in these special tents for a month beforehand in my house in Chiang Mai. Like, I put a tent over my head and it pulls the oxygen out, and it acts as if it's like 5,000 or 6,000 meters. So that helped with the acclimatization. And Everest, you do it so slowly, 7 weeks. So no, I was okay, thankfully. But lots of people were getting evacuated in helicopters constantly. And the frostbite, yeah, it's healed already. I had a big frostbite section here, it's all gone. It was a bit gross, actually, it kind of just peeled off. What's next? I think if you follow my Instagram or Facebook, you'll see that I just put up a little Venn diagram. I'm trying to be the first person to visit every country in the world and climb the 7 summits and North Pole, South Pole. So yesterday I signed up for my last 7th summit, the highest point of Antarctica. It's called Mount Vinson Massive, and the South Pole. So I'm doing that in December and January. What food did you have daily, and what were the hardest things of the experience? The food was pretty good. With our operator, they had a Argentinian and Nepali chef, like 2 chefs or 3 chefs. So at base camp, food was great, and on the Everest Base Camp trek, it's great. Like Nepali food's nice, kind of like kind of similar to Indian, and so the food was great. And then at base camp, sure, it was good. I'm vegetarian, so the options were a bit more limited. And when you go up the mountain, like on those rotations and everything, you have the dehydrated food. But I lived on that shit for 2 months when I rode the Atlantic, so I'm kind of used to it. Food at base camp was good. I'd say 7 out of 10, and the dehydrated food is like 4 out of 10, but it's just fuel. You know, you're there to climb the mountain, so whatever. It's only 7 weeks. What was the worst thing? For me, because I'm such a psycho, like just the potential prospect of failing was the worst thing for me. I constantly was thinking like, oh my God, what if I don't do it? What if I don't do it? I'm so scared of failure in life. And also, this is my goal, right? So if I had failed, the day that I failed, I would have signed up for next year, which would have cost money again and training again. It would have cost me a year of my life. So the thing for me was like, it wasn't a case of will I do Everest or not. For sure, I'm going to summit Everest or die trying, but I'll keep trying until I succeed. So I was really scared of failing. That was the worst bit for me because I couldn't really afford to pay for it again and train another year for it again. I want to move on with my life. So that was, for me, the toughest thing. I was constantly thinking about that. And do I feel fulfilled? Is it a goal worth risking life and family for? Yeah, I do feel fulfilled. As I was saying earlier, I do feel really fulfilled. I wasn't expecting to feel that fulfilled, but yes, I feel very proud of it. And I also feel like it's nice for someone from a working class background to do these expedition things, and it's nice for people like younger versions of me to be able to see people from similar backgrounds with similar accents and similar upbringings, that they can do it too. It's not just some posh English guy with a rich family doing it. Like anybody can set their mind and save for it and work towards it over like a 10-year period. So yeah, I do feel fulfilled, and I feel like the risk that I had with my operator, yeah, it was worth the risk, because they've never had an accident with my guys, and obviously we're all quite experienced. So yeah, I feel like it was worth the risk. How do you pee while climbing to the summit? When you climb big mountains and you're like in a tent and it's -50 outside and the wind's smashing you, you pee in a bottle. You're in your sleeping bag like this anyway, and then when you need to pee, you pee in a bottle. Because you can't go outside, you can't put your big mountain boots on. It takes ages, and that's also dangerous. Like sometimes the tent's at an angle like that, so you could just fall off. So you pee in a bottle, and the next morning you pour it out. Probably sounds gross if you're not used to doing that kind of stuff, but whatever, it's what you have to do. And then when you're actually climbing the mountain and you're like going up these steep things and you're clipped in, you just stand to the side and pee. Nobody cares. Everybody's suffering the same. How did I feel from the balcony to the actual summit, physically and mentally? The balcony is like kind of halfway up on summit day, for anyone who doesn't know. How did I feel? I actually felt pretty knackered, and when we got to the balcony it was like full whiteout snow hitting us in the face. Couldn't really see anything. I was stuck behind these Chinese guys who were really slow, and they wouldn't let me past. I ran out of oxygen and had to change my oxygen bottle, and the weather was just so brutal, and I was thinking like, oh wow, we're really climbing Everest now. I wasn't expecting it to be like this. I was like, fuck, okay. And then the weather cleaned up a bit, but that was a really steep section from the balcony to Hillary Step, so it was slow, and that's when I kept getting to those rocks and being knackered. And I didn't know that the summit was the summit. I thought it was the false summit, so I was lacking motivation. But it was okay. It's just one step after another. It took me hours, but we got there. How much training did I do? Shitloads, like every day for 9 months, and for years prior to that, because I've been climbing all those other mountains. What training did you, what other summits did you reach? If you just Google the 7 summits, I did all of those, as well as things like Mont Blanc and all that. How was the descent? Awful. It's always awful. Even when any mountain, even a bloody hike, coming down shit. And then obviously it takes days to come down Everest. And I know you probably think like, oh, when you climb Everest, you summit it and you feel great, and you do, of course, feel all those things. And then in my mind, I thought I'll just come down. Obviously, it'll be tough, but I'll be so happy that it'll be fine. But actually, it was pretty shit. It takes days and days. I saw that dead body hanging. That was rough. And it's steep, and your feet are bleeding because you're down at this angle, and your feet are smashing your boots, and yeah, it was just quite tough. And watching other people, like I found it hard, and I was really fit, and I just saw other people just like collapsing left, right and centre, just sitting down on the rope, can't continue. And I mean, obviously ultimately they continue, but yeah, it was tough going through the night and everything. Yeah, it wasn't enjoyable coming down. Total cost about 70 grand for my package, and then all the gear is probably another 5 or 10, but I had it all from the other mountains. What was frostbite like? Mine was very superficial, to be honest. How was it? Fingers and toes is pretty bad. I saw like one of our team got evacuated for frostbite on his toes. Peter, Chinese guy, he's okay now, but mine was just on my face, and I felt it getting frostbitten. It was when I was just explaining at the balcony and the wind was smashing me. I had my goggles on and my mask on and my helmet on. No, did I have my helmet on? Don't know. And I had my big hood up from my summit suit, and there was just a tiny little gap here, I guess, and it was like someone was like, it was stinging. It's difficult to explain, but like I could feel my cheek freezing, as in I don't mean cold, freezing cold, as in actually freezing solid. And I kept, when I did a marathon at the North Pole once, and I got frostbite in both cheekbones and on my nose. And the way to fix it, like in the early stages, is to put like real flesh on it, and it brings it back if you catch it early. But obviously I had big mittens on, so I couldn't do that. But I kept trying to cover my face because I knew it was getting smashed. And and then I summited and it didn't hurt anymore and I thought it was okay. And then when I got down to Camp 4 again, I could feel that it was like freezing and feeling weird, but now it's okay 2 weeks later, so all good. What's like going up the toilet up there at base camp? There's like kind of real toilets-ish, like rough but fine. If you're used to like expeditions and stuff, you'll think the base camp toilets are amazing, but if it's your first time doing an expedition, you'll think they're disgusting. And then when you're high up camp, it's pretty rough, like any mountains. Yeah. I'm curious why it seemed that I descended quicker than you ascended. It's a lot easier coming down. Yeah. Now that I've finished and I don't have a rigorous training schedule, do I have a plan to fill that? Well, I've got this other mountain in Antarctica coming up in December, so I start training again this weekend. I'm trying to nurse all my various injuries. But yeah, I'm going to start training again next week. Favourite portion of the climb other than the summit? Oh, that's a great question, but it's quite an easy answer actually. The Everest Base Camp trek is gorgeous. Prayer flags and temples and nice food and beers in the evening. The whole Everest Base Camp thing is amazing. And if you're fit, it's quite easy, so you can enjoy it. That's far and away the nicest part. What food am I most looking forward to? Well, I've just been a pig for the last... I've been back in Thailand for 10 days. I've just been eating pizzas and I'm veggie, but all Beyond burgers and like big chocolate milkshakes and everything. I've been going crazy, drinking beers like most evenings. I never do that, so it's been lovely. Let's have a look. What did I learn about myself on the expedition? You know, you're gonna think I'm joking, or trying to be fake humble, but I'm not. I feel like I procrastinate too much. I feel like I could do more. I feel like I could push myself harder, a lot harder. I think I could train harder. I think I could work harder, make more money. I think I could do more of my charity stuff. And like when you're on these expeditions, you've got so much time to think. Yeah, I feel like I could do more. I feel like I should do more. I feel like I should get up earlier and attack the day more. I'm going to try to do that. How is my hair still perfect? Far from it. Look how bloody grey I'm going. All this stress. How did my Everest compare to the other 7 summits? Oh, that is a great question. Okay, so the 7 summits are the highest mountain in every continent. So in Europe, it's Elbrus, Mount Elbrus in Russia. In Africa, it's Kilimanjaro. In Asia, it's obviously Everest. In Australasia, so that's Australia and some of those islands around it, it's a mountain called Puncak Jaya, also known as Karsten's Pyramid, in the same island as Papua New Guinea, but it actually belongs to Indonesia. North America is Denali in Alaska, and South America is Aconcagua, and Antarctica is Vinson, which I'm doing in December in 6 months. So Elbrus in Russia is cool. I actually, like, when things calm down with the politics, I would love to run a blog trip to Elbrus and take people. It's quite short, it's quite cheap. I know the owner of the company, Elbrus Tours, and it's really fun. 2 or 3 grand, beautiful experience in the Caucasus on the border with Georgia. Not that hard, I'd say like a 6 out of 10. Kilimanjaro's easy, fun. It's like a 3 out of 10. Beautiful, and you can go on safari and go and party in Zanzibar to celebrate. Aconcagua in Argentina, it's really high at 7,000 meters. It's the highest mountain outside like the Himalayan region. I failed it the first time. The mountain got evacuated for storms and I had to go back the following year, so that was tough. I went there twice. Now I'm a bit more experienced. I think that would be okay, but that's not a difficult climb, not technical or anything, but it's high, so it takes time, and that's a really good learning experience for people who want to ultimately do Everest. Denali in Alaska is quite hard. It's cold. You have to carry 25 kilos on your back, 25 kilos in a sled. It takes about 3 weeks as well. It's quite challenging. I just did that one last May, like a year ago. Everest is more enjoyable, and Everest is harder, of course, but Denali is a slog. Puncak Jaya, the one in Papua New Guinea, or the one in New Guinea, is amazing. It's my favourite mountain of the 7 summits. Some people climb Kosciuszko in Australia and think that that's one of the 7 summits. It's not. It's a mountain in Indonesia called Karstens Pyramid. It's really difficult to get to. There's like cannibalistic tribes that kidnap a lot of the climbers if you hike, but you can take a helicopter and bypass that. And I did that with one of my best mates, and it was a really cool experience. It's a big technical climb in the middle of nowhere, like in the middle of this like random island in East Indonesia. Really cool. And then Vincent, let's say it's just freezing cold. It takes about a week. And it's bloody expensive, but that'll be my last one. And then Everest I've just done, and that was tough but beautiful. How much of it was luck? How much of it was prep and skill? Well, there's no luck. There's no luck. There's never not been a summit window because you allocate so much time for Everest, so there's zero luck as long as you put your training in. Well, actually, that's not true. I met a guy back in Kathmandu who, when he was climbing the steep section, a rock fell off and smashed him in the face and shattered his cheekbone, and he was a strong climber, so he was unlucky. But generally speaking, you should be fine as long as you're prepared. Describe it in one word. Oh, wow. Worthwhile. There's one word. What about the gear and the oxygen and the glove system? Yeah, wow. So, you know the big summit suits? If you check my Instagram, you'll see that big, like, one big down puffer thing. I'd never worn one before. I had to buy one just for Everest. I might use it for Antarctica, Vincent as well. But first of all, bloody expensive. I bought mine second hand. And the sleeping bag's same, really expensive, and I bought mine second hand. And obviously it's freezing up there, but Denali is equally as cold, and Vincent's going to be colder. So even though it is freezing, and I still can't feel my big toes, actually, they're a bit frostbitten too, and my fingertips, the nerves, they're a bit damaged. So I did get damaged a little bit from the cold, but when you wear that big summit suit, it's called, the big down suit, your body is warm. The only things that get cold are like the frostbite if your face is exposed, and your fingers and your toes. The rest of the gear is so good. But yeah, my feet get freezing. I was wearing these heated socks and they didn't really work, obviously, because I've lost the feeling in my toes still. It's starting to come back. And the gloves were kind of okay. I had like liner gloves, then another set of gloves, and then I had something called guide gloves, and then I had the mitts as well, like the big fat ones, but I didn't wear the mitts that much. I wore them only an hour or two on the summit when I was starting to lose feeling. I would put them on, and then when it would come back, because it's hard to deal with all your mountain stuff with the mitts on. I hated them, so I rarely wore them. How was the feeling being at the top of the world? Yeah, wow. Like I said, I was very proud and I was very emotional. I thought a lot about my childhood, which I didn't expect. I thought a lot about like having no father, which I just didn't expect to have these kind of emotions. I thought about how rare it is for single parent people to do things like this, because it's normally obviously just wealthy families that do it. And I was very it was a very reflective moment being at the top, to be honest. And then suddenly you remember how cold and windy it is and scary it is and how far it is. You got to go back down, and then I went down. The duration from Camp 4 to Summit and back on Summit Day. Okay, let me think about that. So we left around 2 or 3 in the morning. I got stuck behind those Chinese guys. And I think I summited 10 or 11 in the morning, so 8 or 9 hours up. And then I was quite fast coming down. I can't really remember, to be honest, but I think I was down by about 1 or 2 p.m, so maybe 3 hours coming down or something. Once you get off the Razor Ridge at the top, the Summit Ridge, then it's kind of okay coming down. It's just that first bit that's scary. More difficult than Denali. Yes, a lot of people said when I finished Denali, a lot of people who I know who climbed Everest said that, oh, if you've done Denali, Everest will be fine. They're like similar levels. They're not similar levels. Everest is 10 times harder, colder, longer, more difficult, more chance of death. Yeah, much, much harder than Denali. How hard is Everest compared to the other 7 summits? Yeah, well, Denali's the second hardest, and Everest is much harder, so it's much, much harder. And how dangerous is the descent from the summit? That summit ridge is legitimately dangerous. There's fixed ropes, but sometimes you have to overtake people, or some people are going to the summit and you're coming back, and it's dangerous. It was scary. Probably the scariest bit. One slip and you're dead. Was there a bottleneck on the step, as we've seen in social media? Yeah, a little bit, but by that stage you're near the summit and you're so happy. You're 7 weeks into your expedition and you know it's right there. So, and we were with good operators and we had oxygen, and yeah, there was a bit of a wait, but it was fine. How do I feel now it's done? Overwhelmed or underwhelmed? This is a great question. I don't know if you guys ever read, but when I finished my every country thing, obviously it took me 11 years to visit every country, and I got really depressed after it. Like 6 months, I got fat, like boozing every day, like alcoholism. It was awful. I don't feel like that after Everest at all. I feel the opposite. I'm physically knackered. I'm skinny and like I'm sleeping all the time, but I feel happy and proud and positive. So no, I feel good about everything. Actually, emotionally good. Physically, I'm a wreck. Did I have a sponsor? No, I wish. If you know any, let me know. How many people summited on the same day? Well, there was 400 or so permits and about 150 foreigners, I think, summited, or 200. So it was about 40% success rate, and we all summited over like a 2-week period. So I don't know, 20, 30, 40, 50 per day. Was that, do those maths add up? Yeah, something like that. What did I eat in the week that led to the summit? You're just trying to eat as much as you can. At altitude, you're never hungry. But your body needs fuel, because even just existing, even sleeping at that altitude, like your body's burning so many calories and fighting to produce red blood cells for the oxygen and everything. So you just got to keep eating. It's shit, to be honest. Even when the food's good, you're never hungry. So you're just constantly forcing yourself to eat and drink. And that's part of the battle of doing any ultra endurance event, like multiple days or weeks like this. You just have to eat even when you don't want to. And the people who don't eat, none of us want to eat, but if you're strong enough, you eat, and the ones who don't eat are the ones who fail. So you just got to keep your eyes on the prize. How many panic attacks? None, thankfully. How is all the oxygen bottle waste handed? Well, we bring it back down. That's how it is. How long from the summit back to the different camps? Okay, so for like I said, from summit to camp back down to camp 4 was, let's say, 3 or 4 hours. Then we stayed there for 3 or 4 hours to recover, because we'd just done like total like 14 hours up that mountain. We were quite tired. And then from camp 4 to 3 was like 3 hours or 4 hours. Camp 3 to do was like another 4 or 5 hours. And then we slept at camp 2, and then from camp 2 back down to camp 1 through the Kumbu icefall, I don't know, like 3 hours. How technical is the climb compared to the other summits? Puncak Jaya is the most technical, and then Everest is probably the next technical. It's a little bit more technical than people give credit for, to be honest, I think, Everest. How scary was the Kumbu icefall? For me, because we knew that 3 people had died in the Kumbu icefall earlier on, that was a shadow over the whole existence of it, of course, and I hope their families are okay. So that's tough to deal with mentally, but the actual Kumbu icefall itself is beautiful, and I enjoyed going through it each time. The first time was tough going through it, but it's still enjoyable, and then the next 3 times was nice. I really liked it. It's beautiful, but you can see how it's dangerous, because the crevasses like are opening up and you can barely see the bottom. Some of them are so deep. Can it be done in a month? Yes, if you do this with my operator, they do this thing called the Flash Expedition, and they do it in a month, but it's 100 grand. So depends on your bank account status. Were there any risky moments on the mountain when things could have gone wrong? Yeah, I kind of mentioned it. When that rope wasn't there, you have to go with no rope, and if you fall, you're dead. And that whole summit ridge, when you're overtaking people, if you fall, you're dead. What can you do for the frostbite? Thankfully, it's gone. Describe the last push, camp 4 to the summit. Was it brutal, or did you know you were too close to fail? No way. Most people fail from camp 4. So once you reach to camp 4, you don't feel confident or cocky at all. Not that you're not confident, but it's not the job's not done. You've still got the hardest day ahead. It wasn't until I was an hour away from the summit that I could like appreciate that I was going to do it. And yeah, it was brutal, really brutal. Not being able to breathe, it's scary, and you feel like and you're out of breath because it's so physically challenging. It's hard, and it's constantly like that for hours on end. So yeah, it was tough. How did I fund the trip? Make money from my blog. That's basically it. Yeah, I make money as I've always done online. It's been 15 years now. Don't get a job, it's a trap. Were there many women attempting to climb Everest? Out of the 400 or so permits, I think there was about 30 women. There was one woman in our group. I feel like it's tougher for women. The women that we saw were struggling a lot more than the men, to be honest. They had a lot more help from the Sherpa. People were carrying their bags. It was very noticeable, the difference in genders, to be honest. I know people don't want to hear that, but that's the truth. Why did I do it? Many reasons. I mean, there's the old cliche about Everest that if you have to ask, then you'll never get it, and that's true. But I want to push myself. I want to see what my limits are. I kind of want to push myself until I can't achieve something, and I know where the limit is, and I've yet to find that. I want to achieve something big, so a lot of it's ego and vanity, of course. Every mountain is, and any personal achievement is driven in part by that. I want to make my mum proud. I want to show the world, like I say, that people from my kind of upbringing can do cool things. I want to make the most of the freedom that my lifestyle, I've created a lifestyle that gives me a lot of freedom. I want to make sure I use that freedom and live a full life. And I hope that, I can inspire other people to do things that will leave them feeling fulfilled. And if the alternative's eating pizza on the couch, watching Netflix, it's not a great way to spend your life. Your summit pick looked crowded. Was there a lot of groups on the summit push? Yeah, it wasn't really crowded. It's just the summit's small, and people spend up to an hour up there. So like crowds gather. There was maybe 10 or 15 people, and it's small. It's like the size of a couple of couches or whatever. So it just gets squeezed in for the photographs. I know it kind of looked crowded like that. I should have done a video, but it wasn't very coherent. No, it wasn't. Didn't feel like that. How long did I stay at the very top? About 15 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe. Has everyone from your team finished? Yes. We had 4 people on our team and 4 people on the Flash shorter team, and all 8 summited. Pretty cool. One of them was the first Afghani to summit. Cool guy. Yeah, we all did it. Pretty beautiful. Was it cold? Is the climb very steep, or is it the altitude that makes it so difficult? It was freezing, but not as cold as Denali, so I'd been through worse experiences in tents and stuff where you wake up and it's all snowy. And was it steep? Yes. You know, like everyone was laughing at me. I met a load of people to celebrate recently, and like the first thing, they were asking me how Everest was, and I told them, and they all laughed at me thinking it was like a joke or whatever, but it's really steep, Everest. I mean, I know you probably think, of course it's steep, but it's so steep. The whole thing for days and days and days and days and weeks is steep. So there's never a plateau, or very rarely a plateau that you can even sit on or take your bag off and have a drink of water. It's so steep. It's constantly like this. And I found that really annoying because I'm kind of scared of heights. So like proper like mountain legends, they just kick the ice and then sit on it at this angle and feel comfortable with their bag, and whereas I'm always scared of falling off. So I found that really tough, actually. In regards to water on the summit night, how much did you take and how did you stop it from freezing? God, this is awful, and my guide, the owner of the company, would be furious, but you bring 2 Nalgene bottles. How big are they? 1 litre each, maybe? So 2 litres, and they've got like a insulation layer on them, and I probably drank 150 millilitres all day. It's so cold. Is it free? It might even have been freezing, like the water. I can't even remember. I barely drank, and it's very common for this. It's awful. Like you need to drink, like I said, but on summit day, you've got the big mitts on sometimes. Your water's in your bag. It's really tough to be motivated to take your bag off get the water out, and I hardly drank anything, to be honest. I was dying. Were you one of the climbers in the long queue to get up? It looked terrible. Congrats. Yeah, don't believe the hype. It's just honestly, it's people who do nothing with their lives sitting at home complaining about the queue. Like when you go to Mont Blanc or Kilimanjaro, or when you run a marathon at London, like there's people everywhere. That's life, you know. Big things attract cool people. Cool things attract a lot of people. Yeah, don't get consumed by the negativity. If it's something you want to do it. The crowds are not something that you even think twice about when you're there. Crowds, I mean, there's 400 people in a 2-month season. Fitness levels required. I was like an 8.5 out of 10. I think like some of the people in our group were maybe a 7, but they were struggling. And I would probably train even harder if I was to do it again. So I'd say 7's just about acceptable. It's all relative though, isn't it? I aim to train for a 3-hour marathon, that's what I'd say, or a 100k ultra marathon. That'd be a better thing to train for, because it's long days. What was the temperature during the night? -30 maybe. Pretty cold. How long can you stay on the summit? Like I say, lots of people stay there for an hour, but you have to be really confident with the heights. I'm scared, and it's cold, and you need to know how much oxygen you've got left to come back down, and you need to be confident about coming back down too, because obviously the longer you're up there, you're still expending energy. For me, getting up there, appreciating that I was on the top, looking at the view, taking a second to breathe, achieve my goal, and then leave. But some people one guy broke the record set up for 24 hours. How did you find the mental strength to finish it? I mean, finish what you start. It's as simple as that. In everything in life, finish what you start. Other than the Kumbu, what was the most challenging part? Hillary Step, descent. Yeah, the Hillary Step's tough. Really tough. The hardest part of the actual climbing. It's not like rock climbing. It's like a long slog of like fixed ropes and stuff. But it's the breathing. Not having enough oxygen's killer. Literally killer. When you feel like it's getting tough, what comes to mind? Just keep your eyes on the prize, you know? I feel like some people look towards the success and the glory, and it keeps them motivated, and that's cool, and that's probably healthier. But for me, it's the fear of failure. Like, I couldn't risk coming home and saying I quit. I'd be so ashamed of myself. I mean, if I got injured or something, okay, but just to quit, the thought never enters my mind. It literally never enters my mind on anything I do. So I don't understand how anyone quits anything, to be honest. Like, chooses to quit when you can, and especially when it's a physical thing. Like, if you can physically put one foot in front of your other, keep going. I don't understand why anyone would quit. I can't understand it. And then it's mostly about the danger and the death and the cost I see here, guys. Sorry, just bear with me. Is there a low mental come down after Everest? No, I was expecting it, but no, I feel great. Am I the first person born in the Aran Islands to summit Everest? Good question. The Aran Islands are an island just off the coast of Galway, where I was born with my turbulent childhood situation. And yeah, wow, that's good knowledge. Yeah, and mostly it's the same questions here again. Did I think I was going to die while I was going up? No, I didn't think I was going to die, but I know that there was a prospect of dying, and people were dying around us, so it's tough. What would be the minimum physical performance to let you feel that you're ready to climb Everest? That is a good question. It means maybe someone's considering it. I would say if you can run 100k, even slowly. Run 100k with a 5-10 kilo bag on your back, with brakes and everything. I think that would be a good challenge. How did you find sleeping at that altitude and on the side of the mountain? Yeah, that was shit. Camp 3 is on the mountain like this. Like, the tents are like this, the angle of them. So you don't really sleep. you're pretty sleep deprived actually that week that you're trying to summit, or I was anyway, and you have to sleep with the mask, and I hated that. So sometimes you barely sleep, but you're also in the tent. The sun sets at like 6:30 p.m. So you're in the tent for 12 hours, and you're lying down for 12 hours because the tent's small. So even if you don't sleep that much, or you don't think you sleep that much, you still probably do pick up enough hours one way or another, and the rest is good for you anyway. How many beers? You know, I wanted to get drunk so much when I went back to Kathmandu and party, and I was so knackered. And even now in Bangkok, where I am now, I went drinking once with one mate, but I'm so tired. Like all I can face is like 2 or 3 beers. I've got a big gathering this Sunday with a few of the boys in Chiang Mai, and I'll try to hit it a bit harder then and celebrate. Anything would change about the trip? Oh fuck, that's a good question. Not really, no. I would have probably trained a bit harder, but I'm not like disappointed with my level of training. I'm happy with it, but I guess it'd be nicer for it to have been easier. But no, I wouldn't have changed. Definitely chose the right operator. All my gear was good. My training was good. No, I wouldn't change anything, to be honest. I'm really happy with how it all went. Is it as congested as people at the summit? No, nothing as congested. People just like to hate on achievement. Ignore that nonsense. Do you think you'll look at climbing all 14 8,000 meter peaks? I don't think so. It's so expensive, and honestly, like, it's all fixed ropes. So unless you're doing it alpine style with no Sherpa, no help, and you're doing it yourself, it's not that hardcore, actually. You know, once you've done Everest, the rest of them are not that bad. Maybe K2 okay, but apart from K2, the rest of them are all alright. It's all fixed ropes. As long as you've got a sponsor or something, which I don't, it would just be a matter of getting through them. No, I don't think so. I think there's cooler stuff to achieve in the world than climbing the 8,000 meters. Kumbu. How many were in your group? How do they decide who summits first? Nobody cares about that kind of stuff. I mean, I understand, like, that's a normal question. I maybe would have thought that as well a year or two ago, but no one cares. It's not about that. As long as you get to the top, that's all you care about. Did you leave much garbage on the mountain? How's this managed? Buddy, it's all taken down. A lot of stuff about rowing the Atlantic. Don't do it. That's also expensive as well, by the way, rowing the Atlantic. Were you happy with your fitness levels? Good question. Yeah, I am. What, are you going to organise your own Everest Base Camp tour? Yes. If my missus is okay with me being away for yet again, I would love to bring people to do the Everest Base Camp trek, and I would love to do it with my guy so we could sleep at Everest Base Camp, because most people don't get to do that. That would be really cool. I would really, really like to do that. Alright, I think I'm going to call it a day there, guys. It's nearly an hour. I've got so many bloody questions. Wow. Hang on. Alright, let's just call that a day. So yeah, thanks for listening. That's an hour of Q&A for Everest. Any other questions, just let me know and I'll try my best to answer. What else is going on? So I'm in Thailand now for a couple of weeks. Then I'm taking my missus to celebrate. We're going to Stockholm. Then we're going to Bahamas to swim with the pigs in the Exumas. Then we're going to Iceland for a week, and then I'm taking her and my mum to Bratislava, Vienna, and then we're off to Prague, and then I'm back in Thailand for a couple of months to train for the next mountain, and then I'm running trips, One Step Forward blog trips, but they're all sold out, sorry, but I'm running them to Mali, Turkmenistan, Iraq, and Jordan, charity trip raising money for Parkinson's with my mum. And then I'm running another trip to Mauritania in November. It's sold out though. And the next thing, if you're interested in all this Everest stuff, the next thing I'm doing, I'm going to organise my own event in Mauritania in March. It's going to be called the Eye of the Sahara Ultra. It's 150 kilometres, 3-day event from the Eye of the Sahara. We're going to run to the nearest town, which is called Wadan, an ancient Islamic village on the old Silk Route. And I'm going to make it a yearly event, and the first year is going to be this March or next March. So if you're interested in doing something really, really unique and cool and quite hardcore, let me know. That's it, guys. That's an hour. Thanks so much for the support. I know it's so cliche to say that, but having the little bit of internet that I had at base camp, and the support, especially from Ireland, was something really beautiful. So thank you so much. And just remember, you guys can do anything you want, same as me. Just set your mind to it. Set yourself free. Alright. Take it easy, I've got work to do. Love you. Bye.